Previously on the Game Grinder. That's awesome, because I've wanted this for quite a while ever since I learned about it. I've wanted this for quite a while.
That's it.
Church here, and welcome back to the Game Grinder for part 2 of my Final Fantasy VII NES extravaganza. As I previously mentioned, this is going to be a first impressions or preview video instead of an actual review, and we'll get to the reason why later. Now simply called Final Fantasy VII, the first version of this NES game was also called Core Crisis, an unofficial demake of the PlayStation original. Members of ROMhacking.net then spent 4 years working on a graphics hack patch, which eventually became a more extensive revamp of the game itself. I'm not entirely sure who's producing the reproduction copies of this game, but from what I can tell, there's only a handful of them available. I've seen 2 different styles of the English-translated ROMhacking.net cart, one featuring the label I have, and another with imagery of Midgar and Cloud. I've seen the latter in gray and black carts, and the label I have in gray and white carts. The copy I have is the most complete with a box, with full color manual and poster. The other version I've seen with a clamshell case. These game carts play on the original NES. So then, about the game itself. Let's kinda hit this in order, starting with the visuals. Seeing screenshots of the Chinese NES Final Fantasy VII compared to this are pretty impressive. The ROMhacking.net version really tried to reproduce the scenery from the PlayStation game, and I can definitely tell what areas I'm looking at. The characters have their own sprites that are pretty recognizable as well. The main thing to keep in mind here is they're taking painted or rendered backgrounds and recreating them with limitations of the original Nintendo hardware, since this is really just a game hack. A lot of the additional screens between areas from the original have been stripped down to the essential areas and sections. I was pretty impressed with the main character portraits, then realized how important these are to following the dialogue. In the PlayStation game, when characters spoke, they'd move and gesture, making it pretty clear who was talking, and with the limitations of the NES, the portraits are a perfect solution. The story is spot on, and the dialogue is 100% the same as the original. Nothing was changed at all, and that's awesome, but on the flip side, a lot of what could be considered non-essential story and dialogue was left out. A lot of this was the stuff that added in more depth to the characters, lore, and world itself, but I can understand why they had to cut it down. Also, cutscene events didn't make it in either, and I can understand why. The menu layout is pretty much the same as the original as well, covering the staples like items, status, equipment, materia, and options. And there's pretty much where the similarities end, and this is where it all falls apart. The biggest changes are to the items, combat, magic, and experience system. The combat is kind of what you'd expect from NES Final Fantasy, but the most unfortunate part is the lack of reproduction of the random enemies we faced in the original. For the most part, it's just very random creatures, seemingly taken from stock 8-bit monster sprites. Key moments do feature replicas of the original enemies, like Shinra soldiers at the beginning, and the bosses and so on. The worst part about all of this is the battle system itself. The game is absolutely brutal, and I don't understand how this ended up being the final choice of how it all work out. Basically, enemies are way too hard, deal too much damage, and take too long to kill. There's no difficulty curve at all. In the beginning of the original, enemies would take a single hit to kill. In this, most times they take at least 4. Also, the number of enemies faced is randomized, so at the beginning of the game, it's not unexpected to face 6 enemies at once that take 2 to 4 hits each, and who could easily wipe out the party in a single battle. These battles take way too long, and the experience and money gained is pretty negligible. I would have guessed ahead of time that the limit break system would be removed, but the materia system was as well. Instead, we get a slop together, barely understandable magic and item system that I actually had to refer to the manual to understand. As magic is cast, it gains experience and can be leveled up at a shop. Weapons do the same. It's not inherently a bad way to handle it, but everything is so damn expensive, and like I said, gil gained is really slow, so it's pretty tough to gear up and keep a required stock of potions to keep you alive. I guess if you could handle a shit ton of grinding from the get-go, and don't mind sticking around the Sector 7 slums, but I don't have the patience for this sort of shit anymore. The music is mostly from the original, just done in an 8-bit style, but even with that I was underwhelmed. I've heard significantly better 8-bit versions of these songs, and they're not awful, they're just not as good as I hoped they would have been. My homie Danger9 does 8-bit game music covers, and his stuff is way better. Jumping back to the story, it's pretty spot on for the most part. The scenes and areas follow the original pretty well, and how they handled these story moments were pretty cool, and made me want to continue playing the game. And this is where our story ends, and why I can't give an actual review, because I wasn't able to actually finish the game. In this NES version, I made it up to meeting up with Eris, and heading off through the Sector 6 slums after visiting her home. I couldn't progress any further as the difficulty was just too much. Enemies were easily able to just destroy my party, and it really ruined the game completely. At this point the novelty wore off, and thinking of possibly needing to grind for hours this early in the game just seemed ridiculous. It's a shame really, as I'd like to see more of this just for the scope and dedication that must have went into this, and it's impressive to say at the least. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for someone to come and revamp this ROM hack, and fix these what I'd hope to be fixable issues. Until that happens, unless there's a cheat for this game, I'd really recommend avoiding this, even for the hardcore Final Fantasy VII fans. I couldn't justify the cost for the cart, and if you really want to check it out, I would suggest going with the ROM, but be warned, you will do a ton of grinding. And with this game's horribly tedious battle system, you're bordering on the line of masochism. It's a very cool collector's item, but right now I'm actually debating if I want to sell my copy, because in the end I have the definitive Final Fantasy VII experience. I'm pretty bummed about this game, and I really wanted to love it just for the concept in itself, but seriously, the battle system is just god-awful. The package is fantastic, literally and figuratively, but the contents within are kinda disappointing. Thanks for checking out my preview of Final Fantasy VII for the NES. What were your thoughts on the game? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked what you've seen or heard, please give the video a like, a share, and subscribe to see future videos. I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well, and I post a lot of other great game-related content there, and links are in the description. Until next time on the Game Grinder.